Hello, my name is Jake Woodrow, civic journalist at Tello Community Television. This week, on The Record, we speak with Hawkesbury Paper about a proposed wind farm in Guysborough County. Then we speak with Fisheries and Oceans Canada about the Blue Economy Regulatory Roadmap. And finally, we attended the regular monthly meeting of Richmond Municipal Council. With us today is Jeff Clark, Director of Sustainability and Economic Development with Hawkesbury Paper, who will be talking about his company's Goose Harbour Lake Wind Farm project. Thank you for joining us today, Jeff.
Much appreciate the invite, Jake.
So perhaps we should start at the beginning and have you describe the wind project. How many turbines, how many kilometers does it cover, and what will be the power generation capacity once complete?
Absolutely. So this project, I'll start off saying it's a vital project to the future ongoing success of Port Hawkesbury Paper. So Port Hawkesbury Paper Wind is a 168 megawatt wind farm that is going to be located in Guysborough County, near the communities of Upper Tracadie and Lincolnville. It's going to be supply 60% of the power that is required to run under normal operations for Port Hawkesbury Paper. So it's very important. It's going to be continued success for the support of the employees here, the business, and the communities. What we're looking to do is we had our environmental assessment approved in 2003, which is quite an extensive collection of studies around birds, bats, moose, wildlife, wetlands, Mi'kmaq ecological knowledge, as well as archaeological values. A number of studies went into that to get the approval, and now what we're in a stage where we're moving ahead. We got the vegetation cleared for the right-of-ways on the roads, for the existing forestry roads, as well as for the turbine sites itself. So in phase one, we're looking to establish 24 turbine sites for 7 megawatt turbines each, which gives you the nameplate capacity of 168 megawatts. So we're looking for, by the end of 2026, we should have electrons flowing over to the mill. The footprint itself, what we're looking for is 125 hectares is what the actual footprint of what land we intend to lease from the province. And there will be, for shared easements, there's another 300 hectares of shared easements, but that wouldn't be land leased under the Port Hawkesbury Paper wind farm.
Okay. So you mentioned the wind project will be located in Guysborough County on lands that are under sustainable forest management license to Port Hawkesbury Paper. Perhaps you can explain what that classification means and how it impacts the wind project.
Well, for sure. So the land ownership in the 7 eastern counties is quite unique across Canada, where nearly 70% of the forest is privately owned. 80% of the 7 eastern counties is forested, and like I said, a large part of that is privately owned. 23% of the land base in the forest that exists in the 7 eastern counties are under the control governed by the province of Nova Scotia. 510,000 hectares of that is under sustainable forest management license to Port Hawkesbury Paper. And that's not just for a extraction of a timber volume or timber management, or the right to grow and replant and reforest and manage trees. We also do a lot of planning for other non-timber values, water, carbon, indigenous values, both traditional and contemporary, as well as wildlife, biodiversity, rare lichens, and old growth. We manage all that stuff on behalf of the province within the Crown Forest. So that is the area that we're operating in Guysborough County. The forest is under sustainable forest management license to us there. And what we're looking to do, as other wind projects are looking to do, is to put a two-dimensional surface license, or lease, sorry, within that forest management license. So that area will then be probably subtracted from our forest management license, if that all makes sense.
So according to Port Hawkesbury Paper, the project received ministerial approval in March 2023 as a result of a vigorous environmental assessment process. and will harness renewable and efficient energy to contribute to the long-term viability of the Hawkesbury Paper facility, which is one of the region's largest employers. So can you explain how that process would be considered rigorous?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple stages. So when you put in a class 1 environmental assessment to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, you're required to put in a whole bunch of empirically based field studies and data analysis, which looks at, like I said, it was wetlands. You're looking at wildlife, biodiversity, birds, bats, and moose in particular in that area. We're modeling for sound, how well sound travels, how you can contain that. You're looking at shadow flicker, which is the amount of the strobing effect. If you were sitting between the sun and a turbine itself, what is the flicker and how long does that carry out? Does it impact any dwellings? As well as all the computer generated visual simulations of what it would look like from different viewpoints. So that would be the first phase of an ecological or environmental assessment, sorry. Once you have your submitted and approved, you're still carry on a lot of those studies to second and third years. Birds, bats, everything carries over to second year. You update your sound modeling. So we not only model sound and shadow flicker from the origin of each turbine, we modeled sound from every single dwelling that was pretty close to the project to ensure that that the standard was well within the low decibels. From that, once you get that approved, what you're looking at is a series more of submitted studies that are required. Before vegetation clearing, you have to submit the contingency plan, Mi'kmaq communication plans, wildlife management plans, erosion sediment control plans. So, and plus a few others. Before you can break soil, then there's another series of studies that are required. You have to do your final update on flicker and sound, surface water management plans to make sure that, and because Port Hawkesbury Paper has been operating in forestry in that area for over 60 years, we've always followed the best practices around sedimentation control and erosion control. So we're quite familiar with those processes. And then finally, once before you start commissioning, there's a final set of plans that are due under the environmental assessment. And that's the final bird and bat studies to establish your baselines, and as well as your moose monitoring program that exists there.
So the WIN project team and members of the Community Liaison Committee hosted two community open houses to share progress to date, including environmental, wildlife, and other studies underway or completed, and road and construction preparation and timelines. So perhaps you can explain who is part of the WIN project team and Community Liaison Committee, and what are their roles in this process?
So a community liaison committee is we put out for ads in the paper looking for people from the general public as well as representation from the municipal district of Guysborough County. We received a number of applicants. We have a full slate from people from different communities that exist around our project. Basically, you know, people who are engaged and concerned and want to learn more. And I'm very happy with the way the CLC has been operating. Our members, they come with some very good questions, not just the ones that they have for themselves, but also ones from their people in the community. And our community members are able to actually at a stage right now where they can address a lot of the questions themselves, and they have been as we move along. This was our 6th and 7th open house that we just recently held. And I would say that we did want to add that we did these voluntarily. Both these open houses were not any type of prerequisite for any type of approval or next step of what we needed to do. We wanted to be a good neighbor and share as much about the next stages of what's coming down the pipe in the project timeline, as well as go back and review everything we've done in the past, especially when it comes to the individual studies around the environmental assessment. So we had a really good turnout both in Monastery on the Monday and Mulgrave on Tuesday. We had good turnout, excellent questions, and I think it's very fair to say that everyone left with their questions answered, and the whole takeaway was very, I would say, positive, neutral to very positive from a lot of individuals.
So you mentioned what you're looking at for the timeline. Is that construction and completion of construction timeline still intact? Do you guys expect to meet your goals?
We got pushed back a little bit in our timelines, just the way, there's a lot of moving pieces to this, as I'm sure you can understand. But getting some of the control for the land lease to be able to close off financial close, the deadline was passed, so we had to push the project back a little bit. So we're looking at some civil work later on in Q4 this year, but certainly taking it on in earnest in 2025 during the summer, where we can clear the roads for construction and start putting in the foundations for the turbines. We're looking at Q2 and 3 of 2026 to start the wind turbine delivery and erection. And then we'll hopefully have those electrons flown by Q3 or Q4 of 2026.
So you mentioned those timelines. So what happens now right after the open houses have been held? What's the next step in the process for you?
Well, the next step right now is we're going to do land surveying, continue it on right now, and finish off some of those environmental studies that I had mentioned earlier. So we're looking to, once those are complete, we're looking at financial close probably in September or early Q4. And then we'll start the civil work that begins, and then we can start breaking soil and establishing those the basis for the turbines.
Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with us, Jeff, and hope you have yourself a good day.
Jake, it was certainly a pleasure. I appreciate your time.
With me is Darcy DeMarsico, Director General of Blue Economy Policy. At the H2O conference in Halifax on June 3rd, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard announced the publication of the Blue Economy Regulatory Roadmap, which outlines actions the Government of Canada will take to support innovation and economic growth in Canada's oceans. It focuses on 5 main areas: marine renewable energy and environmental protection, marine spatial planning, marine autonomous surface ships, ocean technology, and sustainable fishing gear and practices. Darcy, perhaps you can explain some of the main areas of the Blue Economy Roadmap. First, starting with marine renewable energy. What does that entail?
Thanks very much, Jake. It's a pleasure to be with you and with your listeners today. So let me say to start that Canadians can be very proud of our ocean economy, which supports good jobs in communities across Canada, and especially the communities along our 3 coasts. But we face challenges due to climate change, which is warming our oceans at unprecedented temperatures, and also due to the transformation of our traditional industries. And so the Government of Canada, of course, is committed to supporting healthy oceans, to creating more opportunities for coastal and inland communities, and contributing to a more sustainable and prosperous blue economy. And so that's why Fisheries and Oceans Canada has published the Blue Economy Roadmap. So as you said, it covers 5 areas, and in particular, it covers marine renewable energy and environmental protection. Canada has the potential to harness energy from tides, from ocean waves, and from offshore wind, but Canada's marine renewable energy sector is still relatively small. And so the roadmap commits the Government of Canada to work to improve the regulatory process for clean growth projects, to encourage businesses to pursue net zero solutions, and to grow the clean economy in Canada.
So what does marine spatial planning entail?
Great question, and I'm sure many of your listeners are wondering. So marine spatial planning is an internationally recognized process for managing ocean spaces. It's similar to how urban planning works in the development of cities, like setting aside some green spaces and also some spaces for commercial use. And it applies that to busy ocean spaces.
Now, as far as marine spatial or marine autonomous surface ships, what does that mean?
Right. Well, so this is on the cutting edge of innovation. So maritime autonomous surface ships are vessels that, to various degrees, are designed to operate autonomously in the absence of direct human interaction. And so this is really a cutting edge of innovation globally, and Canada has some world-leading firms in this space.
Now, what were some examples of sustainable fishing gear and practices that you could provide to our viewership?
Perfect. Well, when we think about sustainable gear, we're really looking at two issues. The first is the amazing innovation that's underway in gear to make time on the water more productive and also safer. So in this roadmap, we commit to explore how to regulate innovative gear technologies so these can come into use. And in that context, Fisheries and Oceans Canada is also developing the whale safe gear strategy for testing and implementing whale safe fishing gear in Canadian fisheries. And then the second issue, of course, is around plastic pollution in our oceans. Your listeners can be proud that Canada is a world leader in this, and particularly in the fight against ghost gear. So Fisheries and Oceans Canada is also committing to work with partners to reduce the loss of fishing gear, to explore the availability of responsible disposal systems, and to increase recycling of old fishing gear.
Mm-hmm. In 2022, the Blue Economy Regulatory Review was launched, looking at how regulation affects ocean innovation. The review examined regulatory practices that are bottlenecks to economic growth and innovation, while continuing to prioritize health, safety, security, and environmental responsibilities in the blue economy. What are the regulatory practices that were shown to be bottlenecks to economic growth and innovation that were identified in the review?
That's a great question. So the goal of regulation, any regulation, is to protect the safety of Canadians and of our environment. But sometimes that means existing regulations can hold back innovation and can hold back growth. So the Blue Economy Regulatory Roadmap responds directly to concerns raised by Canadians and identifies improvements that we can make to support innovation. A great example is around maritime autonomous surface ships that we talked about a moment ago. Right now, Transport Canada's regulations require masters to control vessels. I want to emphasize that our mariners will always remain at the core of Canada's marine industry and vessel operations. But if we want to deploy autonomous vessels, we'll need to change some of those regulations. And so the roadmap commits the Government of Canada to working with industry, with academia, through the International Maritime Organization to meet global standards, to advance research and address challenges, and ultimately, probably, to deploy autonomous ships in Canadian waters, because that could help enhance the reliability of Canada's trade corridors, which would mean more economic opportunities for Canadians and also mean more affordability for Canadians.
Now, as part of the review, Canadians were invited to share their views on how regulation affects ocean innovation, barriers to environmentally sustainable growth, and ways to develop agile regulations to address concerns of future-oriented ocean industries. The DFO said the roadmap responds to what they heard from Canadians during months of public consultation and offers paths to support communities and businesses that rely on the ocean economy to make long-term investments in solutions that enable innovation and advance sustainability. What are the actions the government has taken and are taking right now to do this, or is this something that is kind of off in the future a bit?
Well, so let me say Canada has a strong ocean economy, and the Government of Canada is committed to supporting it and has already been taking action in many areas. The Blue Economy Roadmap builds on this existing work. So, for example, Canada has an innovative ocean tech sector that uses various types of ocean technology, sensor technology, remote sensing radar, subsea vehicles, and robotics. These are all areas where we're world leaders and where the Government of Canada has already been taking action to support, for instance, through investments like the Ocean Supercluster or through the National Research Council. And so the roadmap, for example, commits to building on those past investments and providing ocean-focused test sites so that industry can innovate and experiment and prove their technology.
So I guess my final question would be, what does a sustainable and prosperous blue economy look like once it's fully implemented?
I have to say, I am very proud, and I think we can all be proud of Canada's blue economy. And I think it's important to take action, not just for right now, but also for the future to support it. Because we want to keep good jobs and we want to keep strong communities with strong ties to the oceans, not just for right now, but for future generations. And so that is our goal in developing this roadmap and in all of our work.
That was great. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and answering our questions. Darcy, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be with you.
At the regular monthly meeting of Richmond Municipal Council on June 24th in Ayrshire, one of the first topics discussed were the adoptions of a committee's policy, a low-income tax exemption program policy, and amendments to the purchasing and tendering policy, as well as to the flag policy.
So the next item on the agenda is the motion to adopt. So we have several items here for adoption. The first is the committee's policy. So this committee's policy has been months and months in the making, maybe years in the making, and want to thank Shelley in particular for her hard work on this. But essentially it establishes a framework for committee participation by councillors, members of the public, on either council committees established by council or committees where councillors, presence are requested or expected, that type of thing. And it makes sure that the committee structure aligns with our legislative requirements and legal requirements and that type of thing. It also sets out, I guess a bit of a format for terms of reference. So I guess I'll open for discussion, or I guess look for a motion to adopt the committee's policy at this stage, and we can kind of discuss it after it's been seconded.
I'll make the motion to adopt the committee's policy.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Okay, discussion on the motion. If folks have items they wanted to bring up related to the committee's policy? I know we've discussed it at length, so it's an exciting piece of work, and I think on the heels of the communications plan, a major accomplishment. So, any further discussion on the committee's policy? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, the next item is the adoption of the low income tax exemption program policy. And so for folks who are not familiar with Council's discussion on this policy, or I should say the Bylaw and Policies Committee discussion on this policy, it essentially outlines an opportunity for people who would qualify, in low-income situations for a tax exemption of, I believe we established a threshold of $150. And so this is, I guess, in part to address the affordability challenge of living anywhere in Nova Scotia or Canada these days. So could I have a motion to adopt the low-income tax exemption program policy?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Is there any further discussion on the low-income tax policy? Councillor Sampson.
There we go. No, I just want to thank staff, first of all, for all their work on this. And I know it's going to be a work in progress, and interested to see how it plays out. And it's, we'll see how it goes the first year, and hopefully councils to come in the future can review this often enough to find out what's working and where it can be improved upon. I think we're starting sort of slow, and we'll take it from here, and hopefully it's going to be great to help a lot of people in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Sorry, my computer is dinging at me. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is the purchase and tendering policy, and so this was to basically bring our purchase and tendering policy more in alignment with the practice, which removed sort of a supplier list reference from it. That was, I think, the biggest part of the adjustment, but there were some additional, small amendments as well. So, could I have a motion to approve the purchasing and tendering policy?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I will second it.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion on the purchasing and tendering policy? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the flag policy. So this was an amendment to the flag policy to allow for or to account for the addition of a flagpole that will be specific to the special kind of causes. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting this evening, we are flying the pride flag. So the addition of the sixth pole will prevent us from having to remove the county flag, and we'll be able to celebrate those and honor those special occasions as they arise. So could I have a motion to approve the flag policy?
I will make the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Mike Digdon. Any further discussion on this item?
Yeah, I like the policy for the most part, but I don't know that I can support it just in the sense of for the sixth flagpole kind of thing. I prefer the way it works now with doing the special flags within that group of flags, and I'm not sure that that I'd agree with incurring the extra cost. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson, for your comments on that. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to point out that one of the reasons we put the extra flagpole was to eliminate the process of removing our County of Richmond flag, which, as we sit, I think that's one of the most important flags that we fly year round. So for me, it was a no-brainer to put that extra flagpole up.
Yeah, certainly two schools of thought on that for sure. Okay, thank you for your comments. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so it's motion is carried.
One other thing discussed at length this evening in the council meeting in Arishat, the adoption of a low income tax exemption policy, and going back to your earlier comment about how many people in Richmond County are feeling the pinch right now, so you didn't want taxes to go up. What can you tell me about that policy and why it's important to have that right now?
This was a critical piece of our thinking, even at budget time when we were talking about even trying to maintain the tax rate. We're hearing from residents all over the place saying, we need more support. So we've put this low income property tax policy in place. People can apply under it now to save themselves $150 on their municipal property tax bill. They can apply for that if they're not receiving, support through provincial programs, that type of thing, because there's some technicalities around how that would potentially get clawed back. So we felt that, we're hopefully going to hit people who are maybe falling through the cracks on some of those programs that exist now to help. Maybe they're not eligible for one reason or another. So we wanted to make sure we were getting as many people the support they need in the county as possible by supplementing that provincial program. So, this is a real test for us. We've never run a program like this in Richmond County before. We felt it was important, but we're also really cognizant of the fact that we have very fixed financial, constraints in which we can operate. So, we're going to take a look at this policy, see how it plays out this year, and then look at, is there a way we can adjust it to capture more people, or to either increase the rebate, whatever the case may be in coming years. So, it's a work in progress.
It's okay. I just want something about the low income tax exemption.
Yeah.
What is the current income threshold to be able to?
The threshold is currently $25,000, and it's per household, right? And so we're offering a $150 rebate, and there'd be a process that staff would lead to help people kind of access that rebate.
And if in coming time, if things become less affordable for people, I assume that you guys are open to looking at raising that threshold and maybe expanding even the amount that people are eligible to receive as well?
Yeah, I think, things that I'm hopeful that future councils will be open to, or in future budget discussions, will be, the amount of the rebate. Are we hitting the right target there? The income threshold. And also, right now, we have it set up that, if you're in receipt of other programs, then this one wouldn't be eligible to you. And we did that very specifically because there could potentially be clawbacks on any provincial funding. So, we need to kind of, I think, continue to have that conversation, because as obviously provincial programs change as well, we should be adapting ours. And every year, we know that costs are not, they're only going in one direction. So I think this is a policy we're going to have to look at it on an annual basis.
In your purchasing and tendering policy, you mentioned something about removing the supplier list. Is that about just updating that and removing something that might be out of date?
Yeah, it's essentially that the policy was a little bit out of date with current municipal practices. There had been a reference in it to a supplier list, an approved supplier list, but at the end of the day, a lot of our our practices that we have to go at certain levels of expenditure out to tender or for quote, et cetera. So it became redundant in the policy, and it wasn't a good use of anybody's efforts and time to be able to try to deal with an approved list when you already have requirements for going out for competitive bids on things. It just became redundant over time.
Next, Warden Amanda Mumbriket wanted to discuss a climate emergency plan for the municipality.
So the next item on the agenda was an item that I had added last week when we were formulating the agenda and discussing with the CAO, related to kind of climate emergency planning, but I think maybe there should be a slash there because it is, of course, very much tied to coastal protection. And really, this was just a verbal update that I wanted to provide to councillors because I've had a community resident reach out to talk about how, municipalities across Canada, as far back as 2019, began to declare a climate emergency in their various local regions. And it was, a group called Random Acts of Green. And so, I guess the question is this a road we want to go down? And before I think going down it, I think, we obviously as a municipality need to be doing some homework. Our municipal climate plan was last updated in 2013. I know we've discussed that at this table before. And how it needs to be kind of brought up to date. We probably need it to start to factor in emergency management planning. We currently have, for instance, things like our vulnerable persons registry on our emergency management planning, list of things to do. So there's a real connection between sort of the climate emergency, our climate plans and adaptations, municipal infrastructure, our emergency planning. It all really ties in together, of course, with the coastal protection as well. So this, I guess the thought process is that it is supported by the provincial plan, which is the future of Nova Scotia's coastline. And we're still exploring our role in that through EDPC, I think, because I know our municipal planning strategies that we did for the unzoned areas refer specifically to the Coastal Protection Act. And so there's some work that needs to be done to bring us kind of more in alignment with what's actually rolled out. I'm not sure if council is aware, but there are municipalities who are taking some leadership on this. A great example would be Lunenburg. They've recently passed their own coastal protection regulations. I'm not sure that that's a road we want to go down, but I think there's some lessons to be learned from the example that they're setting there. The town of Mahone Bay has, in effect now, a greenhouse gas reduction action plan. That's I think a climate and energy sustainability director of some sort, so an entire role in their municipality that's dedicated to that work. So what's prompted all of this, aside from the request to consider the declaration of a climate emergency, is that there are currently funding programs and soon to be funding programs that are going to become available, and I'd like for us to be well positioned to be able to take advantage of them, so we could leverage some of our core funds into to get some additional investment. So one of them would be the Green Municipal Fund. They currently have a local Leadership for Climate Adaptation funding program available, and that's a program through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They have 3 funds, basically a focus on adaptation and action, climate-ready plans and processes, and a financing adaptation to help municipalities finance climate adaptation capital projects. That one's coming up. So it would be, I think, be in our best interest to kind of be ready to take advantage of those. We also know that there's a provincial climate change community capacity program from our discussions with Megan McMorris, who has been really helpful. The province also has funding navigators in place. And of course, with Richmond County being the home of the 2, very large hydrogen developments being planned for Canada, this is really an opportunity also for us to leverage that work to improve energy security and affordability while also planning for a net zero future for our county. So that's a lot of information, and I have a bunch of links available that I've shared with Troy and would be happy to share with other folks. But essentially what I'm seeking at this stage from council would be a recommendation to ask staff to update essentially, or to refer staff to look at updating our EDPC information, so that, taking out the pieces from our municipal planning strategies that really speak to the, both coastal protection, but also potentially related to emergency management planning. And then also to kind of refer to staff to work with the provincial funding navigator to see if we could suss out an opportunity that would be specific to these funding programs, to begin to really push the vote forward on this. So that's what I'm just wanting to present to this evening to council for your consideration. And I would have preferred to have a kind of a more open discussion at committee of the whole on this, but timing's everything, and I didn't want to let it go till September because there's funding deadlines coming up in the summer. So just would be open to your thoughts on this and to see if you'd be willing to refer this to staff for further investigation. Councillor.
So these funding opportunities, I assume you've had to look through some of them. Like, are they 100% funding? I'm just wondering how that works where we haven't, it's really the first time we've talked about it. So I'm always concerned to push something down the pipe if we have nothing in the budget to cover off a portion or.
That's a great question. So the ones that I was looking at, I think today were 90%. So the levels are range, right? And so that's why I'm thinking rather than asking staff to look at a specific program, could we ask staff to do some investigation on what would be appropriate based on the budget that we have? Because we do have a section in our budget that is for financing municipal priorities. So if we could find a way to leverage that appropriately, would be great. Yeah. All right.
I'd be willing to make the motion to ask staff to, do some of that investigation, both through EDPC and through the government programs and whatever is appropriate, I think, in terms of, moving this agenda forward and, accessing whatever funding opportunities there are.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, folks. And I should, in terms of further discussion, Troy and I have discussed this, and so we're kind of, on the same page that there could be an opportunity there for sure. So, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Thanks, folks, and thanks for indulging that. Like I said, there's a bit of time sensitivity on it, and I didn't want to let it go till September.
Another spending decision that came up tonight in the course of the council meeting, the idea of climate change and weather-related issues for the county and its infrastructure. Can you give me a sense of what spending and what decisions were made in the budget to deal with this? And then talk a little bit about the possible development of a climate change strategy for Richmond County, much the same as the municipality of Lunenburg took care of earlier this year.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and within our budget, what we looked at was continuing to support a full-time position that will deal with fire services and emergency management in our municipality, and we've been having some really great results with that position so far. Steve Marcellus has been just a real, a go-getter in that role. We've been able to attract hundreds of thousands of dollars from the federal government to support comfort centers, and he's done a really great job, and through him and other staff here as well, to make sure that we're really starting to provide more capacity to communities where we know, they could potentially be providing those types of services, comfort stations, shelters, etc. So it's been working out really well. We wanted to continue to invest in that. What we also included this year was a budget line for essentially strategic priorities of council. So this would be to address opportunities like we discussed this evening around climate planning and looking at ways that we can leverage other provincial and federal dollars into the municipality to continue to do more. Our climate plan has not been dealt with since 2013, and to me, that's, it's a little, it's unacceptable. We need to do better, right? So we need to take a look at that plan, look at what the adaptations need to be now. We've seen more and more natural disasters. I had a conversation with some folks in Digby not long ago about, anyone who's thinking that the climate is not in an emergency status right now, think about the three, the big events that happened here in this province related to floods, fires, and snow, right? So, it's becoming more and more evident that we're seeing more of these intense climate activity. So we need to be better prepared, look at our infrastructure of our municipality to find out how resilient it will be to adapt to climate change, that type of thing. So, so we've got a few different places in the budget where we're looking at hopefully being able to continue to support that work full time, but also looking at ways we can leverage more money for, to get things updated.
Yeah, taking off from that, not just as a way to prepare, you're looking at it as a way to leverage funding, as you
Absolutely.
said, and get access to funding that you might not necessarily be getting now.
Definitely. And the first step in doing that, I think, is to start to work with provincial and federal partners. The province does have funding navigators in place. They've done, they've been reaching out related to coastal protection. They're really interested in working with us. And so I think we need to, continue to build that relationship and to essentially decide on what are some specific things we need to do in the next 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and so forth.
Can I ask you quickly, I know you and other municipal councillors were not happy when the province walked away from implementing its Coastal Protection Act. Do you feel that the county has been able to reposition itself to answer these types of questions, both on its own and in tandem with the province and the federal government since that time?
Yeah, and when the decision was made to not proceed with the Coastal Protection Act regulations, I think we were all a little bit taken off guard by that. Certainly because of the work that we had done in our municipal planning strategy, referring specifically to that work. But what I'm really pleased with is the level of openness that we've seen from the provincial government to date on what's the plan that we can put in place. And I have to say their staff's been tremendously helpful and proactive in forwarding along potential funding opportunities, that type of thing. But we had concerns with the previous plan around the regulations, right? We were concerned that there was going to be downloading to municipalities. We're still concerned about that. So, the change has been one that I think, we need to kind of take the next steps now. We've kind of been through that first iteration of what we thought it might look like. Now we need to pivot and make sure that what, the next steps we're planning are going to be, have a positive impact on the county, but also look for ways that we could leverage financing to help.
Council then fielded grant requests from the Loosedale Lions Club, the Johnstown's Harbour Wharf, the South Mountain Arm of Gold Community Association, River Bourgeois Community Services, the Richmond River Roots Market Garden Society, and the River Bourgeois Mariner Society.
All right, the next item on the agenda is action required. We have a memo from Kathleen Jeffrey, our Director of Finance. It's regarding the Loosedale Lions Club grant request for the Type 4 General Waterfront Development Funding for $20,000. So at this point, we would be looking for potentially, based on past discussions and the presentation from Mr. Sampson, which was I think appreciated by everyone, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the waterfront development funding for the Loosedale Lions Club to be allocated from the CCBF waterfront development funds, subject to assessment by staff as to the project's availability. So would someone be interested in making that motion at this time?
I would love to make that motion. I would like to make the motion to approve the $20,000 from the waterfront funds.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Any further discussion on this item? Councillor Sampson?
Yeah, I just wanted to invite if members of the public are watching this meeting but didn't watch the meeting where Tommy did the presentation on what they're proposing, I would encourage you to go back and have a look. It's an amazing project, and it's great to be any part of it. It's gonna be something great.
Well said. Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Digdon.
Yeah, Madam Warden, I just looking over the ask, and it looked to me like the ask was 20,000. I'm just wondering, in the past, usually when it comes to CCBF and any other funding, we usually do half the ask.
Well, that was the discussion we had for the mortuary, right?
Correct.
In that case, it was,
Oh, sorry, yes.
in that case, it was half the cost of the project. This is a small percentage this is 20,000 on a $1.4 million project.
Is that
What you meant, Councillor Digdon? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's great that I addressed everybody at the same time. Thanks for all chiming in. I didn't mean to push any sour buttons. I just, I guess regardless of the cost of the project, as a rule of thumb, usually the ask was half of what we usually have been funding in the past. Maybe I'm mistaken on that, but maybe that's just the way it rolled out.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, like for clarification, what we have as a practice expected of community groups is, as Councillor Brent Sampson said, is that we would, the municipal contribution should be no more than 50%. And we're doing that as a matter of practice so that we can, stretch the funds over as many groups as possible, but it's 50% of the project cost, not 50% of the ask. What we're expecting is to see asks that are no more than 50%. And like I said, that's been a practice, not less so a policy, but certainly what we've been doing, yeah. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is memo again from Kathleen Jeffrey, Director of Finance, regarding requests for the Type 3 Canada Day grant funds for the Johnstown Harbour Wharf for $500 and the South Mountain Arm of Gold Community Association for $400. So could I have a motion to approve those amounts?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. We'll move on to unfinished business. So these were grant requests, I think, that had been, discussed or appeared on a previous agenda, but without our budget approved at the time, we felt the need to refer them to a later time. So here they are coming back. The first is a request from the River Bourgeois Community Services Society for a grant request for the Type 3 Recreation Sponsorship Grant in the amount of $500. So just as being this is in my district, I'd be, happy to support that from my district funds, but would need someone on council to make a motion as such.
I'm happy to spend your money and make a motion that we approve it out of the District 4 funds.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Any further discussion on the River Bourgeois Community Services grant request? Councillor Sampson?
Yeah, my only question is just where the budget wasn't included, but I know this is a smaller ask and it's coming out of the district fund, so I don't know if that, is an issue for anybody or anything we want to discuss, whether or not would staff be able to work with them to get a fairly simple budget, or just so everybody's on the same page, right?
So, Councillor, there is a budget on,
page, I don't know, the page numbers are a little odd.
Yeah, I believe it's an event budget. Yeah, it's not the annual, but I mean, if we're good with an event budget, I'm fine with that.
okay.
Yeah.
Are folks okay with an event?
Are councillors okay with an event budget being proposed for this? And I'm assuming that staff would have had this conversation because it wouldn't get here unless, yeah, okay. All right, thank you, councillor. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Richmond River Roots Market Garden Society grant request for Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Fund in the amount of $9,200. And I know we want, there are some discussions, some update I'd like to have with folks after having a chat with the CAO about this. But I guess to move it to discussion, I'd look for a motion to approve. Yeah, I would be looking for a motion to approve the grant request for the Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Funding in the amount of $9,200.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Okay, so discussion on the budget. I did want to let folks know that I know staff reached out to the applicant, Dorothy Bernard, today, I think as recently as today, just to clarify a few items. And even for my purposes, when I was reading through it, I was misunderstanding some of the terminology, I think, around, I mentioned that to a few folks earlier, but so there's basically, it's a 5-item budget, I guess. There's staff time that they would be putting towards this. They would be paying per workshop for workshop leaders. They're looking at $200 in posters and ads, and they're looking at paying for a coordinator to coordinate the activities of the volunteers who will be supporting these workshops related to food security and all of that good stuff. So the 5th item on the budget is an administrative fee, and the way it was broken out is really, like, it was creating some problems for me. I know generally when we see a request coming from and I guess just as additional information, that this River Roots Market Garden Society request, the financials for River Roots goes all through the Dr. Kingston Memorial Health Clinic. So they administer the project on behalf of River Roots because they have the capacity to do so. And so they charge an administration fee, which is usually 10%. So the math was a little off on the admin, and just the way it was broken out looked very separate. So the 4 items that I mentioned, the staff time, the workshop leaders, the marketing, et cetera, and the coordinator for volunteers comes to about $8,000. So 10% of that would be $800. And I know that that's an administrative account number I would be more comfortable with, but I think at the end of the day, what it was kind of coming out to for the 9,200 was closer to 13%. So, so I just wanted to clarify that. We did kind of reach out to them, and that's, of course, to ensure that the administration at the Kingston Centre, is at least getting some compensation for the time and efforts that they're making to run all the financial piece and the administrative piece for the project. So, is there questions about that? I guess what I'm saying too is I would be open to a friendly amendment to adjust the amount from 9,200 to 8,800 to account for the 10% admin fee. I'm not sure we would want to go much higher than that, but anyway. But any other discussion on this item? Okay.
Yes. Okay, so can you just help me? So I understood the portion that talked about the coordinator of volunteers. Also don't like the word volunteer coordinator. The coordinator of volunteers. So I understood that, and then the admin piece of $450 for that, right? But where's the rest?
There's another page.
Well, that other page has a lot of things on it.
Yes, it does.
149 and in the if approved block. It spells out what makes up the other 5,750.
There's something wrong with me. I don't see it. I'm sorry, I just,
So there's.
okay, yes, sorry, you're right. I read the top part but didn't see that part. Okay. Yeah, one was about workshops and then, yes, okay.
To, if we were to approve at either the 9,200 or the 8,800, which is, I think, what I would be suggesting, is we would have to figure out how we're going to finance that. I certainly wouldn't be able to do that all from my district fund, but wouldn't mind supporting the project in some way. I think the work that they do is extremely good, but yeah. Deputy Ward?
Yeah, so I agree, Madam Warden. I think the work that they do is very important, and it's a great initiative and great society. So I would be willing to fund $500 out of my district.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Councillor Sampson?
So we also have our general funds as well that we could utilize for this, because it is open to, you know, people from everywhere, and I know different people who go to this from all different districts. I certainly would want it to be moved down to 8,800. I'm still not sure I'm all the way there on 8,800 either. I'm open to conversation, but from others. So for me, I think we should take some from the general funds. I would put, I'd put 500 for my district as well, but I'd like to think a little more about the total dollar value in terms of what we think is right.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, to be fair, as much as I'm a huge supporter of Richmond River routes, it does appear that they're seeking 100% to cover the costs of this work, right? And it's a project like any other. And as we discussed earlier, Councillor Digdon, you know, we've typically been supporting at a 50% level. So, you know, I'm open to other discussions, or if we want to, you know, send this back. I don't know if there's a time constraint here. Did Dorothy mention that when you were speaking with her?
I think it would be too, because this all seems like summer activity,
Yeah,
right? So-
yeah. You know, so I mean, if we're not prepared to pass a motion this evening, though, we certainly could, you know, bring it back, because I'm sure we'll be having a special meeting over the summer. Councillor Digdon, you're trying.
There we go. Thank you for letting me speak. So, yeah, Madam Warden, I guess like Councillor Melny, and in the past, we usually only do support 50%, but I think I would look at it at probably, if we took the 8,800 or the 92, really makes no difference, and we went half from our fund, and then we took, I'd be willing to use 500 from my own district fund as well. So I don't know that we're going to get to the 88, but if I think we have enough councillors contribute around the fund, then I would be open to adding the two of those together, taking 44 from our general fund, and then whatever we get from our district funds. But I would like to see our general fund only support half of, as we do as a.
Okay, so the suggestion is that we would make a friendly amendment to that motion to support at the 8,800 level, 4,400, 50% of which would come from the general fund, and then amounts from districts, from several districts who were interested in supporting it. Is that what you're suggesting at this point?
I believe so far we have districts 1, 2, and 3 that are supporting at 500 each.
Right, and I would put the same, so,
And 4, and
Yeah.
We're just waiting on District 5.
Yeah.
Might not be working, so maybe.
okay. So Councillor Brent Sampson, before I kind of start to formulate this motion then for councillors, is there a contribution that you would be interested in? And I recognize it's early in the year.
Yeah, no, it's early in the year, and I'm wondering as well, too, if it's kind of like two separate asks here, and what if we funded the first one, the 5750 maybe? Because it is a lot to one organization when when they're not seeing funding from anyone else on this, right? I don't know if there's any thoughts on that.
I don't see the breakdown of two separate asks. I see the breakdown, but I don't see where they just.
Go ahead.
Well, I think, and that was the part that I was missing. So there's one part, which is 3450, which is the coordinator of volunteers. Okay. And then there's another part, that was the part I was missing at first, about doing workshops, talking about doing 12 workshops, and then the total of that is 5750. So really it's two separate things, two separate pieces of work. So because without the funding, are they going to be able to make either of those fly? Like if you only give half, can they make it fly? Because they're fully funded, and right now they're in they have a pretty big deficit there. So if you thought about their ask, and if you wanted to do like half 4,600, well, we could either do the 3,450, or we could do the 5,750, bring ourselves to that number, and then at least they could do the workshops.
I think the workshops especially probably aligns a little bit more with food security, like stuff we've been talking about, you know, with the strategic priorities.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I seen the breakdown, but what I'm saying is that the ask is on one submission, it's not on two. Therefore, we're breaking it down for them. So really and truly, I don't feel that's fair either. What we're sending them back, if we go half of the 5,000, we're sending them back with less than what we were originally going to send them back with. So again, I stand on supporting half of the 8,800 at the tone of 44 plus 500 out of my fund, and whoever else is willing to support at that amount. Then that amount, I guess, if the 5 councillors go, it's a total of 6,900. If the 4 councillors go, then it's a total of 6,400. And then if they require the extra funding to move forward, then they can bring back at another. So I'd be willing to make that motion.
Well, so the motion on the floor. And I'm sorry, I've lost track. I believe it was you, Councillor Brent Sampson, who made it. Okay. So the motion on the floor currently was to fund the 9,200. And so we'd be looking for a friendly amendment in that regard. So, and the deputy is the seconder. Yep. So we'd need agreement from both to fund 4,400 from the general, 500 from districts 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you could decide, Councillor Sampson, you know, the 5th one.
Oh, I see. I misunderstood.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be willing to go along with that. I'll just put 250 from the district fund just because it's the beginning of the year. So I much prefer these larger projects that deal with the whole county to come out of the general funding.
And Madam Warden, if the thing around the table, I guess, is to support from the general fund more than from the district fund, then I'm okay with that. I just, as a rule of thumb, we usually tend to go at 50%. So again, I do understand that they are, non-for-profit, and they are in a deficit. So I guess it's the dueling of counsel too. I'm good on either way. I just wanted to point out the fact that we.
Okay, so based on Councillor Brent Sampson's comments about 250 from his district fund, though, what we would have is a friendly amendment that would be agreed upon of a total investment of $6,650, separated out as 4,400 from general, then 500 from districts 1 through 4, and 250 from district 5. Councillors okay with that? I see a nodding from Councillor Brent Sampson, Deputy Warden. Okay. All right, is there any further discussion then? We'll consider that friendly amendment made. And, okay, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried. So, folks, I'm seeing, I think we need some clarification on this next one. So it is a duplicate.
I think it is, Madam
Yeah.
Chair.
Yeah.
And I think with our switch over in the grants, one of them got on here in March and deferred.
Yeah.
So I believe this is both for the draw, Luck of the Draw
run.
event. So the one that was approved in Committee of the Whole and this one are the same one,
Yeah.
I think.
So this is a duplicate that, yeah. So we probably should have, probably, I
Did we
missed.
not defer it through the committee report? I think we deferred it
Was it a deferral?
until after budget. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, because the data was the same, and I just didn't want to, okay, all right, perfect. Great.
So it's meant to be the same.
It's meant to be the same. Okay. Thank you. All right, perfect. I knew there was some confusion on that one, so, all right. So this is essentially for the Luck of the Draw. It's an application for $1,500 in assistance. I think we've supported that in the past, but essentially we'd be looking for a motion to approve the grant request from the River Bourgeois Mariner Society in the amount of $1,500. And I would be, I'd be okay with allocating half of that from my district fund. And I guess the reason I'm saying that is because I'm anticipating additional requests coming in this year and the district fund to be depleted. So that's what I'm anticipating. It's going to be a busy year ahead. But so I'm just not sure that I can support from my fund alone at the 1,500 level. So if councillors wanted to make a motion for the 750 or for the full amount, I'm happy to entertain it just so we can move it to discussion.
Yeah, Madam Warden, if you're willing to take the 750 from your district fund, I would put a motion forward that we take the 750 from the district fund, the regional fund, to meet the 1,500.
To award $1,500 to be allocated, $750 from the District 4 fund and $750 from the regional. Is there a seconder on that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? Councillor Sampson?
I do have a bit of a concern because, as you commented, we have supported this function, I think, every year since we've been elected. I would not support us taking, you can do whatever you like with your district funds. I wouldn't support us taking it from the regional funds, only because I feel like when in the beginning, we were supporting it to help it get back off the ground in terms of like to rebound from COVID. And I just would not like to set a precedence that as groups are hosting fundraising events, that we would supplement that event. So for that, like I said, for that reason, I would not support it. If a second motion was made to just take the 750 from your district, I'll support that, but I wouldn't support anything from the regional fund.
I think I'd be of the same mind, but just for a slightly different reason, only because I was thinking it really fits more along the type 3, I believe. Like this is kind of, it's a large ask for just contributing to the, to the fundraising event. I mean, it's a good event, don't get me wrong, but I'm just thinking of some of these other situations, like the other one we just looked at for 500, and when we provide sponsorship, generally it's not over $1,000. So I'd be more comfortable in the range of 1,000 than 1,500 total. But again, your district funds, I don't feel it's appropriate for me to determine how you want to, you know what I mean, how you want to go with them.
Thanks, Councillor Brent Sampson. Any further discussion? Okay, Councillor Digdon.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would throw in is that there's several organizations that in the last 4 years we do fund every year, and again, our hopes is that they build up so that they can run on their own, but sometimes we do put money in from the county and from our own funds to support events that are really, building, I guess, kind of a building block in the community. And honestly, this is a great event. And again, I stick to the motion that we had on the table.
Thanks, Councillor Digdon. Deputy Warden, do you have any comments? Okay. Councillor Brent Sampson?
Yeah, my only other comment on that, just in case, if you're aware, Councillor Dignan, like this would be the same group we helped out recently to the tune of 10,000, and that's part of the reason I'm thinking of that too. Like I want to support them, don't get me wrong, but it's just we got to be able to be equitable throughout the county.
Yeah, they're working on a major, capital project, so that we approved funds through the CCBF Waterfront Development Fund for that. So, Councillor Digdon.
Yeah, and I think again, we want to make it clear to the public that the CCBF fund is separate of our own in-house funding. So therefore, like the 20,000 we just approved for the Louisdale project, it's a completely separate fund that doesn't really come out of our tax-paying dollars.
Hasn't come. Yeah, to be clear. Yeah. Okay. So at this point, the motion is for $1,500 to be allocated, $750 from the district fund and $750 from the regional fund. I kind of am understanding exactly what you're saying, Councillors Sampson. I'd be willing to put, if you were interested in a friendly amendment, I'd be willing to put my contribution up to $1,000 from the District 4 fund, because I don't think that it's necessarily, appropriate to have, the remainder, like the whole full half coming out of the regional fund either. So if you're okay with that type of an amendment, it'd be $1,500, just to kind of ease the burden on the regional fund. That okay with you? Yep. And
The more money of yours we can spend, the better.
Right on.
Okay, so any further discussion on that item? All right, so we're looking for approval of the motion. 1,500 allocated, 1,000 from District 4 and 500 from the regional. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thank you. That motion is carried.
There seemed to be a lot of debate around some of the grant funding and River Roots Market Garden, River Bourgeois Mariner Society, and the Wharf and Petit de Gras. Is it more about setting bad precedent and violating policy, or is it, what does it seem to be the crux of the debate there?
Yeah, so I think a couple things happening. First of all, we had deferred some of those requests until our budget was passed, right? And so now that the budget was passed, the bottom line is we don't have another committee of the whole scheduled, which is where we would normally debate those pieces out in more detail. We don't have one of those until September. Some of these projects are very time sensitive. So that's why you saw them appear on our regular council meeting agenda this evening. And at the end of the day, we are trying to take a practice of funding projects at, about 50% or no more than 50% of what the total project value is. And that's so that we can make the money go as far as we possibly can and support as many projects across the municipality as we can. And I think, I think what the discussion you saw this evening, that was definitely the intent, and really appreciate the collaborative spirit. I always say that, when it comes to discussing these grant contributions, there really is a sense of collaboration around the table for projects that are countywide like that. So, I, appreciated the comments from all the councillors. But at the end of the day, we wanted to make a decision before the summer hit. And so that's why you saw that play out this evening.
After approving $10,000 to the Portuaire de Petit de Gras for a project at the wharf, Deputy Warden Sean Sampson again raised the funding request with council.
In terms of practice and policy, we did have the grant discussion come back up from the Portuaire de Petit de Gras, and certainly want to continue to work with that organization, but we did run into a technical procedural issue there, so had to kind of end the conversation. But they're that's a fantastic organization that supports a lot of economic activity in our community, and so I think that they deserve our attention, and hopefully we'll be having some follow-up conversations with them soon.
With the budget approved, council was able to discuss requests from Brella Homes and Lennox Place Limited to reimburse them for permit fees in connection with residential housing developments.
All right, the next item on the agenda is Lennox Place Limited regarding a request for financial support for permitting fees. So I think after having discussed this with the CAO, we probably need to, or we could look at approving this at this point in principle, pending the approval of our capital improvement policy that we have focused on housing. So I'd be looking.
It's in the budget now.
It's in the budget now. So we just need to make sure that policy's in place, and. So will councillors be okay with making a motion to approve that pending the adoption of the policy?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Sampson.
So I just want to clarify, when we approve our capital improvement policy, which should be hopefully over the summer, that's the plan. We thought we'd have it today, but we're going to have it soon. Will we need to then revisit this to have a final approval, or will this motion just come into effect once that will the approval of the policy trigger this approval?
Yeah, I think that's what the intent
That's fine.
was.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah, so that's the intent. Okay. Any further discussion? Sorry, CA.
Where this policy is going to be reimbursement of the fees, where it's not so much waiving of the fees, they're going to be a while before they get those bills and be able to supply us with receipts anyway. But I think it'll give them comfort knowing that you've allowed for it in your budget, and we just have to tidy up the policy and the application process so that we make sure we're ready to go with everybody. And then and by all means, I'll be reaching all the housing developers and letting them know where we are. So.
Okay.
Yes, and I mean, then it would just give them the ability to, on any applications that they have to submit, they would be, because that's the big piece that I just don't want to hold up, because I know at least there's a couple that are on today's agenda and probably others in the hopper that really need those approvals, as part of their loan applications or funding applications. So I just wanted to make sure that this motion would be sufficient for them to use that in their applications. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Is there any further discussion? Okay. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. All right, the next item on the agenda is a message from Jeremy Carroll from Brela Homes, and this is again request for financial support for permitting fees. So again, very similar to the last one with Lennox Place Limited, be looking for a motion this evening to approve pending the approval of the capital improvement policy, which covers the permitting fees as well.
So similar to the Lennox Place Limited, I would like to make a motion where we approve this request pending our capital improvement policy approval.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on that item? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried.
While we're on housing, notice council taking action on 2 requests from Lennox Place and also from Brela regarding the waiving or at least making up of permitting fees for their new affordable housing developments. Could you tell me a little bit about what's involved here, what the cost might be? I understand there's a ceiling of $10,000 for this, and just basically why council wanted to go in this direction for these 2 developments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is really one of the things that council has been trying to push forward, because we're recognizing, of course, that there's a housing crisis in our community. I hear from people all the time looking for places to rent. They're needing to get out of one place and into another. It's a really desperate situation for a lot of folks. And the reality is there just isn't enough housing stock in Richmond County across many different types of housing. So our feeling was that we wanted to put a policy in place that would incent developers to invest in multi-unit housing developments. And on 2 fronts really would be, is there a way that we can support if there was infrastructure, potentially water, sewer infrastructure expansions that would be needed to support these projects? How could the municipality participate in those projects? But also on the permitting side. And that's a much, of course, less costly piece than anything related to infrastructure, but still makes a big difference, and sometimes is even required in order for developers to access other like funding programs from other sources as part of their projects. So this is really about creating some incentivizing around new housing developments in the county. So that's why you saw those hit the agenda this evening. That capital improvements policy, we call it, is just about ready, and we anticipate having it approved this summer.
Now, how does the capital improvements policy connect to what's going on with the affordable housing developments here?
So we anticipate that developers will want support in, for their projects. We've heard from several over the last couple of years, especially. And so what we wanted to do was use this policy to create a pathway for us to both financially and support in principle the projects that they have planned.
Obviously, this becomes more real when shovels are in the ground,
Yeah.
but that being said, you've served obviously on the Straight Richmond Housing Matters Coalition for years. You've chaired it. This has been a file that's been important for Richmond County and for the town of Port Hawkesbury throughout this council term. How does it feel for you as warden right now to finally see some movement in this regard?
Yeah, no, it's really great. I wish we could be doing more, of course, but I kind of also, of course, recognize that we have these financial constraints we need to worry about, and so it's a delicate balance, but we have to do something. And so what we are doing is we're trying to learn from best practices in other regions and then right size that for Richmond County.
Now, other than Umbrella and Lennox Police, have others, developers approached you guys for help with the fees, and do you anticipate there will be more such requests?
Unofficially, absolutely. We've heard from multiple developers looking for these types of supports. These are the only two official requests at this point that I could disclose.
Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.